Hello again. This is the Watering Man, Spiritual Toolbox number 47, the Love Chapter number 23, audio recording number 365, examination table number 28. And I'll be continuing now in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4. Okay, just a minute. I'll start out reading it in the King James Version. Charity suffereth long, and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up. Okay? It's at first, in there, the very first word was not even translated in the original language in this verse 4. It's a H-O. Ho, ha. Okay? It's number 3588. It's this word.
Strong's G 3588. Ha. Ha.
Okay? And it, again, is the definite article. It's the, that, this one. Okay? It's that one thought process, all the way down, even down to the plank size thought process, the plank length size process. Remember, the whole universe, observable universe, down to this little hair, human hair, and then expand that hair out to the size of the universe, and all the way down to that plank would be like one hair out of that hair expanded up to the size of the universe, all the way down there. Okay, that's the, which I didn't even translate. Okay, this all the way down to that. That's like God taking this magnifying glass and looking. He's faithful to get it. You can't even conceive that. You can't even perceive that in your mind. You have nowhere to think about that. But remember in Romans 8, chapter 8, verse, about 27, 26, 27, 20, 28, and that's all things will work together for good. And that spirit, that seed that God put in there, that measure of faith, that portion, a limited portion, that seed, that plank-sized seed that God put within you. Down in all this dirt thinking, this crap, this poop, manure thinking. You can manure your dung, your garden to help it grow, right? This manure thinking. And down in there's these little bitty plank-sized thought processes down in there. That's put way down in that stuff. That's that still small voice that you can hear if God gives you the ears to hear. And it's grown. As you agree, God's bringing it out, increasing that size. But it starts out in that. If you don't have, God hasn't given you ears to hear, you can't hear it. Dumber than a rock. No matter how intelligent you think you are in your hair type thinking processes, God expands that out to the size of the observable universe and goes all the way down to a hair out of that. Woo! You're not using that wisdom from that still small voice down inside of you. Because you can't. It's beyond your ability. And seeing God it's down even much smaller than that. I don't know how we would express that. That's what he's showing. Okay? Now that's the. Okay? And it's what it says. I wrote some notes here. The righteousness, the right thinking of God, that love beyond words of God. Okay? It is in any amount. This all the way down to this plank thinking process, that seed, that faith that's going to turn back to whatever level God has deemed it. As God increases that. He's giving you these opportunities to agree to increase that. that still small voice, that faith back into his truthfulness, this hope back into the confidence in God, in this small, still voice in you that's increasing. It's the right-mindedness of God back into his love, this ability to love in him. And this conditional love of this hair side, he's blown up here to the size of the observable universe and showing you all the way down there. He's increasing that into a love that's beyond words, beyond unconditional words. Love, beyond unshakable, beyond perfect love, beyond anything you can even think about in your own mind. Your own mind can't think that way. He can only think down to this hair, and God's blown it up to the size of the earth. The size of the observable universe. Much bigger than Earth. The size of the observable universe. And that's not all. That's only just as far as we can see it through light. It's beyond that. Okay? And he's blown it up this big. Showing a hair out of that. And expanding it. So God is working internal inside you to the external. Don't be like those religious Pharisees and stuff that just polish outside the cup and don't even worry. Don't even think. Don't even nothing about this inside stuff. They don't really know. It's all right. The Spirit cries out for you. God's in control. Don't worry. God's got you. All this other stinking poop thinking it's going to go back to the earth from where it came. Just whatever's left of this, whatever he's increased his plank-sized thought processes in you, in your earthly thinking, bringing it back into his right-mindedness. That goes back to the Father who gave it. Right? Jesus Christ. Jesus. I-E-S-O-U-S. Christ. Okay? God, Father God, Yahweh. Y-H-W-H, not Y-E-H-W-H or Jehovah. No. Take his vowels out. No delay. It's precisely correctly in God's timing. It's doing the correcting. Yahweh. It's God's way. In the Christ. You got to agree. Exist back into it so it grows. Okay? Now, back in here. So that covers the hoe, okay? This one thing. The smallest to the largest part of this little ball thinking. If you think of this little plank length of being like a ball, all the way up to a bigger ball, up to your whole mind, and then out into all humanity. Whatever God does, it rains on the just and unjust. All these storms of life is bringing that back into being. This poop thinking, carnal way of thinking, with those little bitty seeds inside of it. What do you do to your garden? Put fertilizer stuff, poop, on it to help nourish it. And then the water and the rain, there's like calamities, tribulations, fire trials, stuff down in there, and everything happens just right to bring it to germinate. And it's just increasing to grow. But God gives that increase. Okay? There's a lot to think about there. Okay? Now, that's that hoe that let's see how they pronounce it.
Strong's G 3588. Ha.
3588. It's H-O. Okay? Now, the love. The charity, as they put it in King James, okay? Okay, if you want to just stay skimming that, then you'll be them lightweight seeds. You only go as far as God lets you go. Okay? God permits it. It's just what it is. It is what it is, okay? Okay? Now, this charity comes from number 26, A-G-A-P-E, agape, It's this word.
Strong's G26. Agape. Agape.
Agape, okay? And that's that love beyond words. It's that chav. Okay, the chav, the uncompleted love. Those little seeds, those plank length size thought processes that God's put way down in, planted those seeds down in your earth. It's like faith that returns back to the love beyond words, the truth of God. Okay? That love God has for you that's not yet been completed, this chav. He's bringing you through all those storms of life and all these experiences and stuff, so to bring you back to whatever level, ability to love Him in the way He first loved us, so that we can racham, complete that love at whatever level God has determined, that God permits. Okay? You're going right back from out of that stinking thinking process. He's transforming this. He's transforming that stinking thinking process as we agree. Yes, sir, Daddy, let's chop it out. Hi-ya! Try to chop it and change it. Transform it through that fiery, consuming that garbage thinking, and then refining that garbage thinking, and always in the upper manner, back into the right-mindedness of God, back into the existing, back into the self-existing one, back into the way God loves us. Okay? In each and every thought process, that plank-sized thought process is growing. Only now, that's a great reward, exceeding great reward, whatever level you're getting. Okay? Now, so it's growing you from out of this stuff all the way through to, towards, into, and in union with God, and resting in God, and S-Y-N, in union with God's right-mindedness, in union with this love beyond words, in every little thought process. Okay? Now, we're going right back down here to the second word in this chav, or this agape, I'm sorry. Okay? This love beyond words, okay? That child's being completed to the racham, bringing it back into a completed love. You're like marrying God, and not that. You're divorcing that old ego. Get out of here, you old dog. I'm not going to stay married to these five senses any longer. With the ego in control, that seeing, hearing, with that eye, taste, touch, and smell. I'm not in that crap no more. All right, crap thinking, diarrhea thinking, okay? I don't want to eat those old poop hot dogs. I'm not going to partake of that tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Ooh, yuck. Get that stuff out of here. Okay? Now, this love, let's see here. Okay, let's go to a couple places here. I want to touch just a little bit on these. I'm not going to go too in-depth on these, I don't think. Let's go to 2 Timothy chapter 2. Just go to verse 13. Let's go to 12 and 13, okay? Okay, and 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 12. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 12 says, if we suffer, we shall suffer also. Well, if we suffer, we shall also reign with him. If we deny him, he also will deny us. If we go back, if we stay in that old garbage thinking, that's not going on. Only that seed or whatever state that's seed, that truthfulness, that love beyond words, that's what is acceptable to him. This other garbage stuff, it don't amount to nothing. Big pile of dung, right? Didn't Apostle Paul tell us in Philippians chapter 3, verse 8, counts all things as dung for winning Christ? That dung's just going back to, it ain't no good for nothing. Throw it out. That's hog's food. Can't even, yuck. Okay? Now, in the verse 13 of 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 13. Chapter 2, verse 13. Yeah, okay. It says in the King James Version, if we believe not, yet he abideth faithful. If we're trusting in just like hair thinking and not even going down to this universe size blowing at it with the magnifying the microscope and looking at another hair in there like God is, not trusting in God with all our heart, all our thinking processes, plumb down to the plank size thinking processes, we're stupid. What are we doing? We're trusting into that blind alpha dog. It's very limited. Listen, be thankful. God's a great hero because we can't do this on our own. That's way beyond us, okay? Okay, if we believe not, yet he abideth faithful. God's faithful to you. He cannot deny himself. He's not going to deny this, any of himself, not even if it's done plumb down left in that plank size thinking process. That's still of him. All the way that, plumb up to that seed growing up to a great forest in each and every area of your thinking processes. There's great potential in there. But God has to give some plant, some water, but God gives the increase. And he does this in the storms of life, through these fiery trials, these calamities, tribulation, these pressures, thlipsis, okay? Okay? Now, that's just a couple verses there, okay? Now, this love, this agape, is Galatians chapter 5, verse 22, the fruit of the Spirit. It's, and we know that the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering. I did a whole series on that. Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and temperance. Against such there is no law. Because that's the law of love of God. That is the one flavor, the one taste that you could say that whole fruit is. The fruit of the Spirit is love. This love beyond words, this agape love. Okay, that they're calling in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, charity. That's a pretty poor, loose, skimming the surface. That's obscure. That's like in a blanket of fog. You're not getting no understanding pretty much of that. You're misinterpreting that. Oh man, twist that thing all to all kinds of destruction. Keeping you in the dark about what this love beyond words is. Right? Goes all that down to the plank size, plank length size thought processes, all the way up to beyond the observable universe size thought processes of your mind. Okay? Now, so this love, same love, agape, is the fruit of the Spirit. What you're getting, what's reflecting out of you from this grace, the divine charis, this divine influence, God's influence in your heart, in your mind, in your thought process, all the way down to this plank size thinking process, all the way out. Whatever's in there, that is doing the work. It's God's divine influence. God's influence. His divine influence in your heart, in your thinking processes, and its reflection out into your lifestyle, to your very existence. Okay? Now, let's go here to Mark chapter 12. Okay, down to verse 28 through 31. Let me just touch. I'm just touching a little bit. This is not exhaustive by no means. But I'm just showing a little bit. Okay. I'm going to read a little bit and maybe even do a little bit of skimming in a few different translations for you, like a translational comparison. Not even looking at the original language, and definitely not looking at these plank thought processes and hearing the still small voice. You got to do that for yourself in these storms of life, through these experiences, this personal relationship that God is building within you as you agree in hot pursuit of Him. You got to work out your own deliverance between you and God. Right? I'm showing you some stuff. Giving you a spiritual toolbox and aiding you. I'm a watering man. I'm saturating your ground, equipping you with the thought processes of God. So the ones that can hear, that have the ears to hear what the Spirit's saying, can hear Him and turn, doing about face in their mind. And boom, go back. Exist. 1, 2, 4, fall into love with God. New seeds grow. Okay? To whatever level God's bringing it back to. Okay? Now, let's read a little bit of this, okay? Let's read verse 28 through 31 in the King James Version. And then we'll come back and read it in the New King James Version, and I'll do that for a little bit, okay? Let me get a little drink of water. I'm just skimming here a little bit. Man, I might explain a little bit more. Can't hardly help it. It's Mark chapter 12, verse 28. It's 28, 29, 30, 31, okay? King James Version. Verse 28. And one of the scribes came, and having heard them reasoning together, and perceiving that he had answered them well, asked him, which is the first commandment of all? Verse 29. And Jesus answered him, the first of all the commandments is, Hear, O Israel, as God prevails, or may He rule as God. The Lord our God is one God. Just a second. I love you. Be safe. I love you. Okay, babe. Okay. Verse 30 in the King James Version, okay? And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. This is the first commandment. Or the first in time, place, and order of importance. Okay? And verse 31, and the second is like, namely this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, thy fellow human being as thyself, because God has put those seeds, those plank thought process, plank length size thought processes in all. That faith, he gave everyone a measure of faith. Read Romans chapter 12, verse 3. Okay? Okay, let's read that in the King James Version again. And the second is like, namely this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these. Okay? Now let's read those verses in the New King James Version. Doing a little bit of skimming here, a little bit of like surfing, so that you don't have to, like you're surfing that wave of emotion, right? Like that sine wave and missing the mark of God, the will of God, this constant love beyond words that God has for us, this will of God. Okay? You're up here and down there. Up here and down there. So you're proceeding right back into the mind of God, like at the speed of a gamma ray, right? All right? Like it's this plank thought process. You're way out there, maybe even so far out there, you're way off, even worse, slower in your reaction, being on the right mind of God, you're missing it even more than these radio waves are missing this, like at the zero level, at the love beyond words. Okay, and speeding up and stuff. Okay, now, so we're looking at this a little deeper, a little deeper, a little deeper. You got to go on beyond this. And then go on beyond in your experiences in these storms of life and turn and stuff and do these. Let everybody work out their own salvation, their own deliverance. Not in fear and trembling, but with respect, honor, love, adoration, realizing, oh my goodness, Father, you're the greatest. You're my exceeding great reward. You're not a monster at all. Okay? You're turning these little bitty electron experiences, negative experiences in my life, these storms, into greater than the size of an atom in the nucleus, and you're holding me tighter than this strong nuclear force it does to the protons and neutrons in an atom, in the center of an atom. See? And one of those little negative experiences in the natural electron is 1,836 times smaller than one proton in the nucleus. That would relate to being smaller, being less significant. In reality, the way God thinks, all this stuff, no matter how hard this tribulation, fiery trials, calamities, all this stuff is like a negative electron experience. The size of it just really insignificant. Can't even find it hardly. And this proton being 1,836 times greater, more glorious in God's nature, character, and authority. That's just a tiny picture. And it's exceeding that. God is your exceeding great reward, like he told Abram in Genesis 15:1, okay? Now, let's read these verses in Mark chapter 12, verse 28 through 31 in the New King James, okay? New King James Version. Verse 28 says, Then one of the scribes came, and having heard them, reasoned together, perceiving that they had heard that he had answered them well, that Jesus had answered them well. The scribes asked him, which is the first commandment of all, the most important, okay? Jesus answered him, the first of all the commandments is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is the Lord is one. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Verse 30, And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first commandment. And the second is like it, is this, You shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. Okay? Now, whoops. There we go. I'll have to do this unless I switch the thing. I'll have to do it a little slower. I'm going to do now some verses. I'll do verse 28 in so I got a couple minutes. And let's just pick one of these versions. I probably won't be able to go through all these. Let's read this next version. It's read it in the one they call the BBE, okay? Okay, it's just a translational version. It's read verse 28 in the BBE. It says, And the scribes came, and one of the scribes came, and hearing their argument together, and seeing that they had given them a good answer, put the question to him, which law is first of all? Okay, 29. I may not get very far in this. I'll just do what I can before it cuts me off, okay? The BBE, I have to do it this way unless I change all that. Jesus said to them, the first is, give ear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one God. Okay, verse 30. Whoops. Sorry, I hit it wrong. Verse 30. And we're wanting the BBE. Okay. And you are to have love for the God, Lord your God, with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. Verse 31. It's going to cut me off here, but we'll do what we can, okay? The second is this. Have love for your neighbor as yourself. There is no other law greater than these. Woohoo! Now this has been Spiritual Toolbox number 47, the Love Chapter number 23.